my name is Sophia, and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So today I am once again, of course, talking about school spirits. Hello, so as you can see, in a different outfit, totally different day, but I actually decided I'm talking about both episodes 4 and 5 in this video because I realized that I'm getting very behind and I need to speed this up before the 6th episode. It's just been so hard to catch up. So I will be talking about Season 3, Episode 4, The Bereftest Club, and Season 3, Episode 5, Raiders of the Lost Scar. So of course, first just talking about the plot, going character by character. So first, I am talking about Maddie, of course. So obviously something we see with Maddie is she has kept having these weird visions. She sees like the dollhouse that her dad got for her. In her house it starts like glowing red, and she starts feeling like she's back in the boiler room and everything as a ghost. And then she sees the dollhouse also in the hallway of her school when she's at the Saturday detention with everyone. Because obviously at this point, like when it first happened, we weren't sure if it really was just like a dream, and you know, it was just showing that like her heart is still like in the ghost world. But now I think, you know, we kind of know at this point that it's not just that. Like, there's something deeper with these because it has literally happened, like, so often at this point. And I feel like the visions are getting more and more, like, dark and, like, scary as it goes on. Now, Maddie and Simon are really, like, kind of having some tension right now because Maddie just feels very, like, overwhelmed by everything that's happening. And she's really scared of Simon just, like, jumping to, you know, do whatever to try to get out, and like she's scared that he's gonna accidentally, you know, do something that gets him like actually dead and then he's forever stuck there. And she's kind of like saying to Wally, he jumps before he thinks, and you know, it's just annoying her. And I don't know, I have like mixed feelings because I can kind of see both sides, you know, but I also like have my disagreements about both sides. So like, because I can see from Maddie's perspective, you know, like why she would be like worried about him. But then I can obviously also see Simon's side of like, of course he would want to try to get out and like do this stuff. And like part of me does also feel like it's kind of hypocritical of like Maddie, like after everything Simon did for her, like he did so much for her. Like he literally helped her get her body back, and now she's just like really annoyed at him. Like, I don't know. And then I just thought it was funny in that scene when she's talking to Wally and he tells her this whole little like exercise to like calm down of like thinking of your favorite movie and putting it in a suitcase like in your brain. And she's saying how her favorite movie is this movie called Harold and Maude. And apparently it's about like, it's related kind of to like her and Wally because it's like all about a relationship between like a younger guy and like an older woman, which obviously they're the same age. You know, Wally's forever a teenager, but like technically he would be like in his 60s. He's like, really? Harold and Maude? Like that movie about the guy that's in love with like an 80-year-old woman or something? And she's like, and how old are you these days? Like everyone, all her living friends are kind of like, well, even the ghost too, like keep just asking her like how she's doing and like if she's okay and all this stuff. And like especially after they found out about Sandra like going to like detox again and whatever, like they keep asking her about it, and she's like, finally she just kind of like has this moment where she snaps and she's like, okay, like I know you guys all like mean well, but like it's just really overwhelming me, like everyone asking me about it, or like acting like her going to the detox is like some great thing, because she's like, this has happened a million times. Like she's gone to rehabilitation centers and stuff a million times and it never completely fixes the problem. So we kind of just see her have this moment where she kind of is like breaking down, but her friends are obviously still very supportive and are saying like, we're here for you, and like it is gonna get better, like, you know. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of a very interesting moment because I kind of talked about it in my last video too, but like we're starting to really see like how much Maddie's mom's alcoholism like really affects her. I mean, of course that like we've always seen that like from season 1, but like I think it was always a big question like in season 2 of like, oh, but you know, if she does get her body back, like how is that gonna like affect, you know, their relationship again and like all this stuff. So I feel like it's just interesting that we're starting to see that, and like it is just also going to show that like it goes to show, like, not everything is just, like, happily ever after just because, like, she got her body back, you know what I mean? Like, she still has to, like, face these problems in her life and stuff. Like, at the end of detention, she's, like, talking to Xavier, and they have, like, this nice moment again, and she says, like, just, like, thank you for, like, everything you've been doing recently. And she says, it's easy to forget people are there for you when you're in your head all the time. I just thought that was, like, a good quote because I feel like that's so real. And I definitely think that really sums up, like, how Maddie is feeling currently and how, like, why she's interacting with people the way she is, kind of. And then we see that by the end of the episode, when they're leaving the school, she once again has one of those weird visions, and she sees the dollhouse burning outside, which we finally know, because that was, like, one of the biggest things in the trailer that I saw, like, the dollhouse burning, and I was like, what the heck, like, is that gonna be? But obviously now we know, but obviously we still don't really know, like, what it means. But then we also see, like, she picks up, she thinks she's seeing, like, the doll of herself, like, from the dollhouse, and she, like, picks it up, and then it, like, cuts her hand. And some people have actually pointed out the fact that it actually cuts her hand, like, in the same spot that Simon's hand got cut. And it's, like, scary, but then, like, when Xavier talks to her, she gets, like, snapped out of it, and then she sees that she's really just holding his car keys. So obviously something is literally messing with, like, what she's seeing and, like, what's real and what's not, which I feel like also is just, like, a good metaphor for, like, what's happening to her, because obviously just in general she's very, like, it's hard for her to differentiate between, like, what's real and what's not, like, you know, the ghosts and the real people and stuff like that. But yeah, and then we actually hear her say to Xavier, like, can I stay at your place tonight? Because like, at the beginning of the episode, he had offered to, like, stay with her because he was, like, concerned about her, but she was like, no, I'm fine. But then obviously after that, she's like, okay, yeah, like, I'll take you up on that offer, which I was very happy she did, because I'm like, girl, like, you need someone by your side right now. I'm gonna talk more about the whole dollhouse situation and, like, her visions and stuff in my, like, theories portion of this video, so yeah, I won't go too much into that now, just because I feel like that's, like, a whole long conversation that we can get into. So then in the 5th episode with Maddie, we see that at one point when she's, like, waiting for Xavier while he goes into the hospital to talk to the ghosts in there, she's, like, looking up on Simon's iPad Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which is a rare neurological disorder characterized by temporary distorted perceptions of size, distance, and time, often causing objects or body parts to seem much smaller or larger than they are. So obviously we can see she's really thinking about these visions, and they're really affecting her, and they're completely, you know, affecting, like, how she sees the world around her. But obviously I don't think it's just a neurological thing. I think there's something supernatural happening with that, but, you know, we'll get more into that later. And then we see she has another one of these visions while she's in the car. She is about to put the radio on, and then there's, like, Simon's distorted voice continuously saying, like, you can't save me, and everything's glowing red. And then big jump scare happens. I was not ready for this. Simon's body, like, falls down on her car. So obviously that's really scary, and we can see that, like, all these visions are really just, like, playing into, like, her biggest fears, because obviously right now she's just, like, so concerned about Simon and, like, trying to save him, and she's so scared that she won't be able to save him. And then I thought it was interesting when she's going to this harvest festival and she's talking to Dr. Hunter Price, and she's saying, like, what will it take for you to not tear the school down? And Dr. Hunter Price says, I think you'd be overjoyed to demolish the place that points to lingering questions about your absence. So I just thought that was interesting, you know, like, it's still going to show that the whole thing about Maddie still is really a mystery to everyone, you know, that isn't her friends. And, you know, it kind of makes you feel a little scared for Maddie, like, you know, like, what they're gonna do with her, and if they're gonna, like, you know, make certain speculations about what happened to her. But also, I obviously still think there's something very strange about how determined Dr. Hunter Price is to tear the school down. But, like, I don't know, just obviously something's telling me that there's more to this, and Dr. Hunter Price I don't know, knows something. Like, I feel like she has to have some sort of supernatural, like, connection, but I, like, literally can't figure out what it is. I mean, I know I have seen some people say maybe she's even, like, related to Van Height, like, far back, and she's trying to stop, like, you know, she doesn't want, like, the secrets of, like, what he really did to be, like, revealed or something. Well, like, if he did really cause all those deaths and everything. I don't know. Leave what you think is going on with her in the comments. Maddie's like talking to Claire and Nicole, and then they like go off to go to the tarot card reader, and Maddie leaves her backpack, and we see Livia look at it very strangely, and then later in the episode Maddie realizes she doesn't know where her backpack is. And then Xavier ends up finding it, I think he says, like, by the petting zoo, even though that is not where it was before. So obviously we can make the assumption that Livia took her backpack. As we see, Maddie does get her backpack back, but we don't see her actually, like, look in her backpack to, like, see if everything's still in there. So I feel like, you know, obviously Livia probably took something. Probably the iPad, which is gonna be a whole thing, because it's probably gonna, you know, she's gonna figure out that there's something weird happening with Simon, and then who knows what she's gonna do with that information. So that's just gonna make things even worse. And we see right before she gets her backpack back, she has another one of those visions, but this one's really interesting because there's, like, at the very end of it, she sees, like, it's like in the boiler room, it looks like her scar, but then, like, there's an exit door of, like, what looks like the front door of her house. So obviously that's strange because Maddie shouldn't have an exit door because she was never actually dead, but in this vision she had an exit door. So, you know, I don't know if that's just like her, you know, the subconscious part of her that still feels very, like, connected to the ghost world. That's just, like, what it's trying to say, like, oh, she still feels so connected to the ghosts that, like, she's imagining that she actually has an exit door when she doesn't. Or I don't know if that's hinting to something deeper with, like, I know some people have had theories of, like, is Maddie still somehow kind of, like, literally connected to the ghost world because she was, like, there for so long and, like, all this? I don't know. So I don't have too much to say about Wally from these past two episodes, but I did think in the fourth episode, you know, it was interesting when we saw, like, he got really mad at Simon. He says, like, you made me lie to Maddie about the fact that Simon went down to the hole. So obviously we really see how Wally just feels so loyal to Maddie, and he doesn't like having to, like, withhold any information from her. But we see that he still, even though he kind of has, like, tension with Simon, he still, like, will do anything to help him because of how much Maddie cares about Simon. Like, that makes Wally care about Simon too, in a way. And then I liked the moment, though, when Wally, like, talked to Maddie in the bathroom, and, like, he kind of gave her, like, the suitcase exercise that his coach would have them do, where it's like you imagine a suitcase and you put your favorite movie inside the suitcase. And I thought it was funny, once again, how Maddie mentioned the Harold and Maude movie, and then they both, like, quote this quote at the end, and they, like, say it at the same time, like, that's wonderful. But we did also see, which was interesting, that Wally finally told someone that he saw his exit door, and that someone was Simon, but he still hasn't mentioned it since, even when, like, in the fifth episode they keep talking about, like, oh my god, we could be stuck here, like, if they tear down the school, and, like, we don't know, like, how we could get out, and, like, meanwhile Wally's literally probably thinking in his head, like, I literally saw my exit door, like, I could get out. Although that is something I've also been kind of curious about. Like, I don't get why they don't think, like, why can't they just try to go back in their scar and see if they find their door? Because that's, like, literally just what Wally did, but I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see if they do that in the future. Now talking about Simon, who obviously has a lot going on in these two episodes. So, like, in the fourth episode, he talks about how the whole, like, church place kind of feels like a sub-scar to all the other scars, like, and we do find out that, like, for sure, like, it is a church. And we start unraveling all of that, which I'll talk about more after. And then we also see in that episode, like, when he overhears Maddie talking to Wally about him and saying, like, how he's pissing her off. And, we see him very upset, obviously. And once again, I already kind of talked about it, but in that moment, I do actually kind of feel bad for Simon, because I feel like he went through so much to help Maddie, and now Maddie's, like, getting mad at him, but I don't know. And then in the 5th episode, obviously we see that when White Eyes grabbed him, he, like, made him, like, see this memory of, like, the kids in the church, like, way back when. And then we just kind of see, like, we hear, like, thuds and stuff, and we see, like, a person's, like, hands, and they're, like, climbing up the stairs, and they, like, shut a door and all this. And obviously we're, like, assuming that it's, Van Height or whatever, like, locking them in and causing them to, get stuck in the flood. And we also see all these, like, creepy drawings, like, on the walls and stuff. And I also just thought it was funny when they're, like, saying how he, like, moved really fast, and then Charlie's like, I thought you said he was hella old. And Wally's kind of like, yeah, he's hella old, but, like, he's not, like, he still moves really fast and, like, is really powerful. Guy who was in the church that died, like, the one adult, is Alfred Van Height, who obviously, yeah, we still don't really know if that's White Eyes or not. They're kind of just making that assumption, but I don't know. I'm kind of starting to think that they're not the same person, but once again, we'll get into that more later. And then I thought it was really interesting when, like, you can see Simon is, like, so shaken up from, like, what just happened, and he says, like, I'll sit this one out, like, when they say that they're gonna go back in. And that was just, like, shocking, because I literally think that's, like, the first time in this entire series that we've seen Simon say, like, I'm gonna sit this one out. Like, he's always, like, doing whatever crazy thing needs to be done. So that was just, like, shocking, and goes to show, like, how creepy that situation was. The fact that even Simon, of all people, would, like, sit out. But then we see he spends time with Charlie, and he's, like, watching a horror movie called The Sender, which is a real movie from 1982, like Wally time. And he says it's about a psycho who transfers his evil thoughts into his shrink's brain. So I guess he's just watching this to try to see if, like, I don't know, he could see if, like, something having to do with, like, how that person transfers their thoughts, like, could be related to how White Eyes could, like, transfer his thoughts into Simon. And I also just thought it was funny when he says to Charlie, like, I'll warn you before he chokes and the rats crawl out of his mouth, and Charlie's, like, laughs and then is like, you're not joking. But then what I thought was, like, one of the most interesting things, I think, was when he said, he was like, how does White Eyes have my memories? Because he said at one point I could see, like, the person is, like, looking down, like, in the memory at their hands, and they were holding these rosary beads. And Charlie's like, oh, well, he's in a church, like, but Simon's like, that's a Lutheran church and they don't have rosary beads. Those rosary beads are mine, because obviously we knew from, like, the prior season, like, Simon's Catholic. And he was saying that those rosary beads were my birth mother's, and they gave, like, the hospital gave them to me, like, after she died. So, like, why did White Eyes, like, have his rosary beads, like, in the memory, So obviously this is starting to really make us think that there's more to, like, why Simon is there specifically, and, like, why, yeah, like, just why all this is happening to Simon. Because, like, they make us think in the beginning that it's just kind of, like, random, like, he just happened to, like, stumble into the scar, but, like, now we're starting to think, like, maybe there's kind of a reason why he was able to get stuck in the scar, even as a living person, like, we feel like there's some kind of connection with, like, him and, like, the supernatural, which I love, and I can't wait to, like, find out more about that. And then there's, like, this really nice scene where Simon talks to Charlie, and he's saying that he kind of lied to Maddie because he had told her that when his sister Sabrina reached out to him that he, like, answered her, but then he says that he actually never responded to her, because we find out that his biological mom actually died in childbirth with him, so he feels really like guilty, and we find out that Sabrina's like 4 years older than him, so you know, her mom like died when she was 4, and he just feels like she probably like resents him for like killing their mom, you know, not really, but you know, even though obviously Charlie says like, well, why would she reach out to you if she resented you? But I just think it's cool that we're finally like getting more like information about like Simon's family and like history and everything, and I once again think that's really going to be important and really going to like play into maybe something about like why he's, you know, connected to all these supernatural things. Then we see when he goes back into the church, him and Mr. Martin find like writing that's in Finnish, and Mr. Martin translates it to say, "Do you know who I am?" And there's a creepy drawing of Simon on the wall all of a sudden. So obviously that's really terrifying. We don't know what that is, but once again, it goes into this whole theory that like Simon is there for a reason. And then also Simon finds this ring, which Mr. Martin is saying maybe that was the heirloom and like the bribe that these people were talking about in the scar, because Mr. Martin sees this whole like vision of like this woman crying over her kid that died in the flood, and then this man who's like, wow, give it up to the man of the hour who, you know, was responsible for all these kids dying, and like all it cost him was one family heirloom, but like, you know, maybe you still have a chance to get your bribe back or something. And Mr. Martin's saying maybe the ring has to do with that, but I'm kind of like really confused by that whole part of the story right now. I don't know, because that was just all said really fast, and I'm just really like, wait, what are we talking about? Like, why was it a bribe? Like, what is happening? So I don't know. I feel like we need to just like find out more information about that in the next episode. Now talking about Xavier. So first of all, in the 4th episode, I loved how he like checked on Maddie and like offered for him to like stay with her or something, because he's like concerned from all her visions and everything. Even though she doesn't take him up on it at first, but I just think it's really sweet. And I started to talk about this, I think, but like I'm just loving what they're doing with Xavier's character this season. Like he has just been so great and like caring to Maddie and everything. I also thought it was funny when Nicole is like recovering from her first hangover, and then she like is joking around with him and Claire and like says Xavier's favorite movie is Dirty Dancing, and Xavier's like, no, it's not. I just like that, and I also thought it was like a funny little nod to season 2. And then, because I think I've also talked about this, but Xavier has also just been getting so many like really funny lines this season. So like I just put like a bunch. Like I love when he said, because when they're saying like they want to maybe try to like fake Simon's voice or something for like to leave his parents a voicemail so they don't worry. And then he's like, oh yeah, I used to do that when I was younger to like get out of school or something. And he says, and they're like, wait, what? And he's like, I would illegally impersonate my father, the sheriff. I just thought that was so funny, especially because of like the irony of like his dad being the literal sheriff. And then when they're all like, okay, we're gonna, you know, go off, try to make this voicemail and all this stuff, and they're like, you can do our assignment. And he's like, yes, we choose the nearly failing student to do the work. And then obviously a really iconic moment that a lot of people have talked about is when he's like running through the halls when he sees that the principal's coming back, and he's like, caw-caw, caw-caw. And he's like doing this bird call like to get their attention. I thought that was so funny. But then moving to a more like serious like note, once again, I really like when he kind of talks to Maddie, like when they're leaving detention, and he says like, you know, she's just talking about how like upset she is right now because she's trying to like help, you know, all her loved ones and everything, and he says like, you can't control everything, and then she says, it doesn't stop me from wanting to. I just thought that's a really like real sentiment that like I feel like a lot of people go through, is having to learn like that you can't control everything. And like he even says to her like, I'm a call away, like whenever you need me. And I just thought that was really sweet. And then in the 5th episode, I also thought it was funny when in the beginning he's like, oh, I hope you're not like freaked out from like staying over at my place, and he's like, you seem really like shaken up, like when you came downstairs it looked like you were staring into an aquarium and we don't have one. But then we learn from him when he goes into the hospital, he learns from Maddie's dad that there used to be a foundry where the hospital is now and it collapsed. So he said that there was already ghosts like at the foundry, but then once the hospital was built, like once the foundry collapsed and then the hospital was built over it, then that's when like they couldn't escape and they were trapped and they became the Forgotten. So obviously we're seeing like, you know, this is like an issue because if the school gets taken down, then what would happen to, you know, Wally, Simon, Charlie, Rhonda, like all of them. And then I think it's really funny when he goes to try to talk to Tracy about Kyle, and he's like at the Belle concert that she's directing and he keeps like getting up to clap and it just like never ends. I thought that was so funny. And then once again he has like another really sweet talk with Maddie in this episode too, and I was like, I loved it so much because it was like, I feel like it was a scene that I've been like waiting for so long, like of him and Maddie to kind of like connect like after everything that's gone down between them. And you know, like he really like comforts her once again and says like, maybe you're having these visions for like a good reason, like maybe they're trying to, you know, tell you something, they're trying to warn you things. And he like says this whole thing about, you know, he used to not even be able to go past the hospital and he would feel like scared, and now he like works there and everything, and you know, so he's like facing his fears and all this stuff. And I just thought it was like a really sweet talk with her. And he also says like, sometimes I wish we could have been the people we are now when we were together. And I thought that was a really like cool line too, because that's definitely something I've even thought of. Like it's interesting, I mean obviously I'm like a Molly shipper, but like even though obviously that's kind of complicated, but it is like interesting to think like, you know, how much different their relationship could have gone if, you know, they were who they are now as people. So now talking a little bit about Charlie. So I also thought he had like some pretty funny moments in the 5th episode, because when they're all going down to the Scar, he's like, I can wait here with Simon. And he says like, I've had some not so great experiences with people over 5'10", and then we see Wally like look over. And then I also liked when him and Simon are watching the scary movies and Simon's like, you're not a fan of like horror movies? And he's like, I have enough scary stuff in my head. And then also another funny moment when he's having to like chase after Simon because Simon's like running around and he's like, that was more running than I've done since I died. But then when he's having like the nice little talk with Simon, I like how he shares with us that, because when Simon's talking about Sabrina, he says, I have a brother and like I haven't been able to talk to him in 30 years obviously, and you know, so I've had all these like one-sided conversations and like I would do anything like to be able to talk to him again. So like, you know, when you get back to your real life, like please reach out to Sabrina, like don't let your fears like get in the way, because like it's so precious, like have those moments with her. And I just thought that was really sweet. And I also like, once again, it's really interesting because we've never really like learned too much about all the ghosts, like if they had siblings or anything like that. So like it's really like cool, but like kind of weird to think about the fact that Charlie like has a brother somewhere, and I kind of hope we like hear more about that or something. I also just want to say I was just very happy too, because I feel like in this episode he finally was starting to be more of like the Charlie that I know and love again. Like, because like I kind of talked about, he was like low-key kind of bothering me in like the first 3 episodes because of like how he was treating Yuri and everything, and he just like felt very different from like the normal Charlie. But then I feel like in this episode he was finally like the Charlie I love. He was just like sweet and funny, and then he gave Simon that really nice like sentiment, so I liked that. And then another funny moment, then Simon's like, I'm gonna go talk to Maddie, and he runs off and Charlie's like, okay, yeah, I'll just be ordering an iron one from Amazon. So now talking about Yuri a little bit. So in the 4th episode, I thought it was really interesting how we see him have this long like talk with Mr. Martin and Quinn, like when they're like getting high together. And you know, it was just so interesting, especially like to see Yuri and Mr. Martin like interact a lot. Like that was something I don't think I ever really predicted like a duo to like see. But I actually thought it was really nice. And like, you know, they start to get very like existential, like talking to each other. And then because of that conversation, he finally goes into his scar. So we finally see that, which is obviously sad, as they all are. And we see that his whole scar is kind of filled with like his biggest fear, which we kind of see is like floating by in life and not really enjoying anything and not having like much freedom and stuff. Then when he's talking to Charlie about it, he says like, I was so afraid of getting stuck that then like I did it to myself as a ghost, because obviously we see like that was all very ironic, because when he became a ghost he did end up just staying in one place and doing the same thing over and over and over, because it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy or like self-sabotage. Like he was so afraid of it that then he did it to himself, you know? So I just thought that was really interesting, and I feel like that's really like a cool concept to like explore in this show, because I feel like that is a very prevalent thing that happens to a lot of people, is like a lot of us tend to like kind of, like I said, like almost fulfill like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But then we also see how he finally kind of like discovers what Janet was saying about how to keep things from resetting, because he took a flower from outside with him into the scar, and then just because he had it in the scar with him, it didn't reset after that, like when he left. And I just want to say I'm proud of myself, because I actually predicted that. I mean, I feel like that wasn't like too hard to predict, but I did actually say it. I'll insert, like, this was one of my slides from, like, you can go back and watch my like season 3 theories video, and I said like one of my theories about how you could keep things from resetting is just like bringing it into your scar, because I said like maybe it's because it's becoming so engulfed in like the trauma that it just like keeps it from resetting, kind of like how like if so many people are like in their scars for such a long time, it like makes all this trauma like kind of thin the veil briefly, like between the living and the dead. I thought like maybe that would kind of happen to like an object, like if you put it into the scar, like then it could kind of thin the veil and like ghosts would be able to like still have it. So I was right about that. And then I just thought it was sweet in the 5th episode when Charlie is like saying something about like he feels bad that he let Simon like run off again, and Yuri says like, you know, don't worry about it, like it's not your fault. He says anyone who'd want to ditch you isn't thinking clearly. And I just thought that was sweet, and I like that Charlie and Yuri, I feel like, are finally getting back on the same page.